And now the second lecture's the contributors. So getting into more of the use of optics and chemistry that we're a little more familiar with today. So starting back a long time in history, around roughly, they're guessing 750 BCE, before Common Era. The Assyrians have the Nimrod lens. Now, with it is some type of optic device. Play around and studying with it. They're able to sort of enlarge images, like kind of like a magnifying glass. But whether or not it was used like a magnifying glass or something of that nature, they're not exactly sure what the use of this was. If any of you had kind of like a childhood like me, where you take a magnifying glass and you could position it just right, you could start to burn a hole in leaves or blades of grass, stuff like that. Some think that maybe it could have been used in that manner, but nonetheless, that there is this crystal, basically, because it's before the invention of actual glass comes into play for the Assyrians. It's a crystal that's been cut, formed, and highly polished. So Modai, or Motai, he basically, some give sort of a nod for inventing the camera obscura, so that he is playing around with optics and lights and things like that, and basically came up with kind of a rough idea of camera obscura, but not really widely used that we know of. That brings us to Plato and a lot of his philosophies and his ideas. Really Plato's caves, kind of a easier way to describe it is, down in a cave where you get far enough down there is no light coming in. So your only light source is a torch or, candle, some type of flame. And so that, of course, projects shadows, and this idea of likeness and the shadow that you see, is it real? Is it a projected image of yourself? What is the shadow? So it gets very, very philosophical. If you want to, research Plato's cave, if you're kind of interested, it's kind of an interesting read, but again, it's very, very philosophical, but this idea of the projected image of someone. And then next, the theory of vision and optics, Alhazen. So basically, some of his ideas came about, in a dark tent with where there was a hole in kind of the little flap, the side there. And it said that, he noticed that stuff outside he could see, projected on the inside. Also, a lot of Islamic cultures, they really turn to science so that they have a better understanding of the world and, how the world was created, why the world was created. A lot of these types of questions, and they're trying to find answers to them. So a lot of his studies dealing with optics and the way our eyes work, and, light rays, a lot of that. ideas and observations, recording his observations and all of that. So we get a better idea of, how our eyes works and how some of the optics work. So next, Albert Mangus. So silver nitrate, he discovers that it darkens in the sun. And silver nitrate is basically the base chemistry for black and white photography. So again, as I mentioned before, we're getting into kind of mad scientists, part of the whole idea of alchemy, wanting to turn lead into gold, playing around with different chemicals, different chemistries, all that sort of stuff, so that you have people stumbling upon silver nitrate and its properties where exposed to sunlight, basically the UV lights, it will make this material darker. So next comes along, Roger Bacon during the 13th century. So now you have, we've had glass for quite a while. So glass has been around for quite a while, but it was mainly used, for like windows, for, vessels like vases, cups, things like that. Roger Bacon finally starts to, figure out if you have a slight curve to the glass, then you get into magnification and things like that. So now we're starting to use glass to create, glasses, reading glasses, seeing glasses, what we're sort of used to. They're basically creating lenses as opposed to just a flat sheet of glass having the curve to it to magnify images. So getting into early ideas of a lens. And then the Leonardo's magic lantern that we talked about before, basically a little box with a candle in there, you put a translucent paper lens on it to help project that image onto a wall. So again, just a little refresher, this, early idea of a projector that is made. Then Hans Lippershey. So, getting into telescopes. And, much like we talked about with the Johann Vermeer, his paintings with the microscopes and, sort of champion science, now that we're starting to have all the things come together, lenses, magnification, so now we're getting into, actual telescopes, seeing stuff beyond, further away from us, with the aid of these lenses. At the same time, they're also learning that if you move these lenses closer or further away from each other, that sort of helps to create a focal point. It helps to focus the image. Such as, Galileo's telescope. Here we have a model of his telescope. So it would have been pretty crude and simple. Usually, two lenses, one at the back, one at the front. It's still pretty crude type of apparatus, but at the same time, Galileo is able to, see these planets and start figuring out there are these other planets out there and that they have moons and all this other stuff with the use of optical devices. So then also another part to it, Isaac Newton. So where he gets into the principle of mathematics. He breaks down light, the color spectrum, using different optical devices. So through optical devices, he's able to figure out things. So again, a lot of science going into this that he's bringing to the table. And then Johann Schultz, again, mad scientist playing around with different uh, formulas, different mixtures. So it's known that, silver nitrate is out there. Silver nitrate, you can expose it to light and it's darkened. But how do you control that light? How do you control light? How do you control the exposure time? How do you control this image that you're able to create? So Schultz basically trying to find a way to make this early photographic process, this early photographic chemical. But we're still kind of away from what we know of as photography, getting closer to it by this creating of an emulsion. But how do you control that emulsion? That's still a part of the unknown, an unknown in the process. So then, Thomas Wedgwood. So him playing around with silver nitrate again, and also the shark egg case. So these are sun prints where you need, the sun. We don't have negatives or anything like that. So if you want to sort of create this photographic image of something, you put it on a treated sheet of paper. So it's treated with the emulsion, much like Schultz had created. And so it is, put out in the sun to create the exposure. And so basically, you're able to see all the little veins and things like that in the leaf there of the Thomas Wedgwood. So another sort of famous sun print is the shark egg case, and it's a shark, creates this little case full with its egg in there to, that's what it lays, it attaches, and the little baby shark comes out, sings a crazy song, and it gets stuck in your head, and all of that fun stuff. So very similar thing, the shark, the egg case is laid down on the sheet of paper and put out into the sun. So it's great, we can start recording images, we can start recording things, we can visually record things. Now we have the chemistry and the know-how to do it. The problem with it is there's no way to stop the process of the exposure. So that's why it's kind of has this reddish color that until there was a way to figure out how to halt the photographic process, which comes along a little bit later. These images continue to expose, they can continue to darken, even after, brought in from the sun. Again, the chemistry is not quite there just yet. And then next, Hercules Florence, a Frenchman who moved to Brazil. And his process that he comes up with, essentially it's like a photocopy. So using the Zuffoni, making a polygraphy, as he explained it. So again, we're using some type of treated paper, exposed to the sun. So it's The Zoofoni is kind of like an enlarger in a way, so that you can, in this case, you put this little diploma in there, the light shines through to expose the treated paper underneath the lens. So essentially what he created is an idea of a photocopy. Um, and so at the same time, while he's working in Brazil, over in France, that we'll get to in just a bit, we have Nepis and Daguerre. They are also working with photography and these processes. And so at some point, sort of worlds collide. Florence finds out about what Daguerre is doing. Daguerre finds out what Florence is doing. And as we get into Daguerre, Daguerre, you could say, is like a shrewd businessman. So he accuses Florence of stealing his idea, basically. Whereas Florence, basically, he comes out, and his statement on all of this is, if I'm in Brazil, I'm working on these ideas, I can't say I'm the only person doing this. In this day and age where we get into the Industrial Revolution and progress of science and all of that stuff, he basically states, I can't say that I'm the only person in the world working on this idea. Other people have done it before me. There's a whole lot of evidence that it's there. So truly, I'm not the first one. I don't know what the big deal is about. But like I said, Daguerre is very kind of a shrewd businessman. So that he goes to Brazil. At the time, Brazil is kind of its own little empire. So he shows the crown his photographic process and how it's better than Florence process. Basically, forcing Florence out of the picture. So that is it for the contributors. The next lecture, we will look at the actual invention of photography and its uses.